Um, hey everyone, welcome to Q&A with Dave and Jay. This is our first go at this sort of video podcast thing, but we want to just have another outlet for all of you to have an opportunity to just talk with us and kind of hear our thoughts on some things, just lighthearted fun. We're still doing staff house today Wednesdays and Sunday services, and we got some stuff planned for Easter coming up that I'm sure you'll find out about soon. But today, David and I are here with a bunch of questions from you guys, and then some that we came up with on our own. And hopefully, if this goes well and you guys like it, we'll be able to keep doing it, and you guys can keep submitting questions. Yeah. Got anything you want to say before we get started?
I just realized that you probably know Jayson a lot better than you know me, and that's okay. That's a good thing. But I think it'll be fun, and if I put my head to it, I'm thinking, all right, there's a lot of folks sitting around the house. There's no sports on. There's no interaction with one another in the community. Though we know we can make phone calls and that sort of thing. But I think it'll be nice to just have some fun. I always have fun, but there's being a preacher, you have to be a little bit more serious. So this will be a little bit more sort of I don't know.
I agree. I saw
cut loose a little bit. I'll try not to say cuss words. How's that?
Yeah, we'll try our best. I saw something recently. It was like on Facebook. There's this video. It's a bunch of marbles like rolling through a ditch, and like the person had them behind a board and like pulled the board and they all ran. And it said, "I've never been so excited to watch marbles race," because it was during this COVID time.
I watched it. I watched that. I actually saw. I think the orange one won, but yeah. Oh, and then I also saw the Twitter feed or the Twitter video of. There was a series of Rube, what are they called? Rube Goldberg machines.
Like the big complicated.
And I'm thinking like I probably have enough time now to actually build a Rube Goldberg machine, but I probably wouldn't be good at it, but I have a thing for Rube Goldberg machines. I don't know why.
Maybe it's because you're an engineer.
I guess.
All right, so we're gonna jump in here, and unless the question is like specific to one of us, we'll both be answering it. So. This is one that I know that came from the Nipper family, and it's, what are your favorite movies?
I don't watch a lot of movies. I had to confess on Facebook the other day that I had, for the first time, watched The Empire Strikes Back. I'm 42, and apparently that shocks people that I had never seen episodes. Was it episode 5? No.
It's one of the first 3. It's in the first.
Yeah, so 4, 5, 6. I had never seen it before, but I was really grossed out that Princess Leia has a long extended kiss with her brother, which I knew from episode 6.
But she didn't know.
She didn't know, that's right. But and thankfully it wasn't like an open mouth kiss, but
right.
it was like, and I was like, ooh, and then I jokingly said, I can't believe that's his dad, but I knew that already. I knew that because everybody says I'm your father, Luke.
Right.
My favorite movies have always been Back to the Future, best movie ever.
I have a shirt that says flux capacitor and then what decimal number gigawatts is.
Yeah.
It's got like the logo of the flux capacitor.
It's science fiction, but it's not dystopic. Like it's not, oh my goodness, the world is going to be a really dark place someday. Though, you watch the second one and you think that, but the first one it's oh man, this is great. What it would be like to go back to 1955. That's my favorite movie. And I used to sit around and like if I needed to get emotional and cry, I would watch Forrest Gump. What about you?
Choices. So I recently had to answer this question for my online dating profile. But favorite movies, I really like Dead Poet Society. That's like one for me if I want to have like a good emotional moment. Dead Poet Society is a go-to.
Oh, Captain, my Captain.
Yep. I also really enjoy. There's one that came out. I think it was 2019 or 2018. It's called Baby Driver. It's a heist/driving movie, but it's also kind of like a musical. So everything in the movie is set to the beat of music. So like if gunshots happen, it's in tempo with the music and all that. It's just like a cool sort of like musical action movie hybrid type thing. Like nobody sings that much, but everything is on tempo and it's really cool. And the other movie I chose for that, which it's just a movie that I love because I have Wanderlust, and it's called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Mm-hmm. It was directed by Ben Stiller, and he's the lead actor in it. And it's just this guy who he works at Time Magazine, and he's the negatives asset manager. So he manages all the negative photos. And this is it's also talking about, well, digital's the new age, so his job's kind of irrelevant now. There's only one photographer that works for Time at that time that prints negatives or still uses film.
Yeah.
So he gets this picture that's called The Quintessence of Life, and it's a negative, and he's supposed to put it in as the cover for the next Time magazine, and it was going to be like their last issue before they had a takeover. And he gets the roll of the films from the guy, and that particular number shot isn't in there, so he goes on this big travel journey across the world to find it. And his whole life he's just been like this guy that is a negative assets manager that like works in the basement of Time magazine, but he's always dreamed of like these big adventures, and now he gets to go on one because he has to try and find this photo. It's called The Quintessence of Life. It's really good.
I saw Ford versus Ferrari.
I watched that too. It was good.
I liked it.
My dad is really into cars, so I was like, Dad, let's go watch that.
Yeah, I was a big fan. I was really ticked off at the ending, but I won't spoil it for you. I should have known it was going to happen that way.
It was historically accurate, right? I'm pretty sure that ending is what happened too.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. I won't say anything else.
All right. That's our
Thank
favorite
you.
movies.
Was that from the Nippers?
Yeah.
Thank you, Nipper family.
Tim said that if we didn't say The Unforgiven, it was the wrong answer. So guess we weren't.
Anything Western, country Western, I'll go with that too. Though my daughters look at me like I'm crazy when I turn on that kind of thing. Okay, the second question we have today is why did you choose Tech? This is my question. He didn't go to Tech. Why did I choose Georgia Tech? It's not a long story, but it's kind of whatever. I'll just say it. So I grew up a Bulldog fan, I guess, like most kids do in this state. My parents went to Georgia, and I went to football games at Sanford Stadium and watched them lose. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Lose a lot, and they were always sort of a mediocre team. Again, I'm not going to say any more than that. But the Ray Goff years, I'll leave it at that. The Ray Goff years, what a great set of years you guys had with Ray Goff. But I went to Georgia Tech not for football, believe it or not. I know that's hard to believe, but I actually did go my freshman year. I got a scholarship to be a football manager, equipment manager. But that was because I was going to go to Tech. It wasn't because I got the scholarship to be a manager and thought that's a good reason to go to Tech. But the way I tell the story is, so I got mono in my after my senior year. I was actually, no, it was before my senior year in high school. I was I guess 17 because I was older. I was 17. It was August, and I caught mono, and this is in '95. And my mother said this would be a great time, since you can't do anything, to go ahead and do your application process. So I sat there when I recovered enough to sit up and work at the table. I sat there and I applied to Georgia, and I applied to Georgia Tech. Only because those are the only two places I applied, and the reason was because my mom and dad said, you can go anywhere you want as long as it's a public school in the state of Georgia. And so that limited my sense of, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go to school in Georgia. At first I thought, well, I'd like to go. I thought about Vanderbilt, and I thought about applying at Emory. My mother was very not interested in me applying to either of those two schools. And anyway, so I applied to both. I got into Georgia pretty quickly, like around September. And back then, I think it mattered that if your parents were alums. I think that mattered. So I got a pretty quick acceptance to Georgia. And then I never heard anything until about November from Georgia Tech. And I got my acceptance letter around November, which was kind of like the second round of acceptances. And I went to Andreas Kohler, who was this German guy who was my math teacher, and he said to me, well, you're going to school. And he really did sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He said, "Why are you going to school after all this?" And I said, "Well, I've been accepted to. I've applied to and been accepted to Georgia and Georgia Tech." And he said, "Oh, don't go to Georgia Tech. You'll never make it there." And so I was really ticked off at this guy because I actually made pretty decent grades. I was making A's in his class, and he was a hard calculus teacher, but I wasn't his best student. I wasn't like in the top 3 of his students. I was probably in the top 10 of his calculus students. And so he said, "Oh no, you don't need to go there." So So I said, what? And so I went home and I said, Mom, I'd like to go check out Georgia Tech. And she said, really? And so we took a day off a couple weeks later and went down to Midtown from Canton. And I just sort of fell in love with it. The other piece of it is that my parents both went to Georgia, and I was sort of, I dare I say, rebellious for not wanting to go
Right.
and do the same thing my parents had done. I had told anybody who would hear me, I am leaving Canton, and I will never come back here. And my mother just wanted me to just, basically buy a house next door and become a lawyer, that kind of, lawyer, doctor, teacher, that kind of a thing in Canton. And I was quick to say, I'm out of here. I am not coming back. So there was a little bit of rebellion, I guess, in me going to Tech. But if anything, initially my decision was probably made because Dr. Andreas Kohler said, you'll never make it there.
So you just did it to prove somebody wrong.
I can't stand when somebody tells me I can't do something. I just can't. I'm very, very stubborn that way. So that's a long story. That's how I'm into Tech. And then, of course, when I got there, I fell in love with it. And it was very difficult. I was not the best student by any stretch at Georgia Tech. There were far, far brighter students there. But I never failed a class. I graduated with a 3.02 GPA. I was happy to say I graduated with honors. I worked for every little point on that GPA.
Mm-hmm.
So for what it's worth, hard work pays off. And for me, I was by far not the smartest kid there, and professors weren't looking for me to do doctoral work for them, and I certainly wasn't invited to go get a master's degree there. But so I was sort of under the radar, but I was always I worked my tail off. I'll leave it at that. And honestly, I'm glad I went to Tech. Not that this was the question, but I'm glad I went to Tech because it taught me that if you do have if you're determined and if you are truly willing to do the work, you can make it in life. And I'll never do anything any harder than what I did at Georgia Tech. Being a student at Georgia Tech was hard, but I did it. And hard work and discipline pays off. That's not what you asked, or
No.
that's not what they asked.
Yeah,
but
so I will just say, since I hopefully have some students watching, and they might wonder why I chose a small school. So my plan in high school was going to college to be a nurse, or I originally wanted to be a radiologist, but then I decided nurse because I didn't want to go to med school because that's a whole other 4 years, and I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to be a nurse. I was going to go to this really, really, really small school in Vidalia called Bruton Parker College. It's like a Baptist college, and I was going to study biology for 2 years and then transfer out because I wanted to play soccer, and I got a scholarship to play soccer there. Well, ended up not wanting to do that after just kind of sitting down and really thinking about it and thinking about if I'd enjoy playing soccer, going to the school that small and stuff. So I ended up going with the other school that accepted me, which was Georgia Southwestern. I only applied to those two schools because I knew I'd get in because they were smaller. But the reason I wanted to go to a small school in the first place was I'm from a small town, and I have always enjoyed being able to talk with my teachers one-on-one or just have class discussion and be involved in that. And when I went to college, my biggest class, I think, was about 45 students maybe. And that's music appreciation, which is like one of the biggest classes that you can get in college because it's a freshman course, and in my school you're required to take theater or music or art appreciation. You have to take one of those three. So you're going to have a third of people taking those courses during that semester are going to be in that class. So it was like 45 kids, and that was the biggest one I had. Everything else was really small. My senior seminar was 5 students.
is that a public school?
Mm-hmm. It's part of the university system of Georgia. It's a really good school. But I wanted to do a small school thing, and I wanted to be able to talk to my professors and just be involved in discussion and stuff. I get distracted easily, and if I'm not being looked at, or if the conversation if it's more just straight up lecture without discussion, I'm not going to be able to really dig into that because there's a classroom of 300 people. The professor's not going to care if I'm watching. So
Yeah.
that's why I chose small school. All right. So this is I mentioned this when I posted the announcement for this podcast. It was you can ask us anything. Do you want to know how often I get called a hippie for having long hair? And somebody said, well, actually, I would like to know how often you get called a hippie for having long hair. The word hippie, I think I've only heard seriously once or twice, but I have been often rebuked for it or I remember, so when I worked at People's, there was this customer one time that came in, and it was, to start this day, our painter that came in frequently said, I used to have long hair like that when I was your age, because he's, not older, but he's older than me, he's an older guy, so, and he said when we were kids and I had my hair like that, people called me a hippie, and I said, oh, well, the only thing people ever call me is ma'am, because I was a teller and I had long hair, so if guys came up to the window, didn't look at me, they'd just say ma'am, because A, you always think bank tellers are ladies, I guess, and B, the long hair didn't help, so later that day, I had a customer come in, and she was doing a transaction and whatnot. She goes, can I ask you a question? And I said, yes, ma'am, you may. She goes, you're not going to get mad, are you? And I said, no, ma'am. She goes, you a boy, right?
Oh, my goodness.
And I said, yes, I'm a boy. And, but that happened often with long hair, or little kids asking if I was a boy or a girl, because they couldn't tell, because I sounded like a boy, but I had long hair like a girl. But hippie, not too often.
Next question is, what books have impacted your lives the most?
Other than the Bible. I didn't write that.
Can't say the Bible?
No, we can't
Okay.
say the Bible, because we work in a church, so that's a given.
What books have impacted my life the most? The one that comes to mind. Oh, there's several that come to mind. There was a book that I read when I was about to enter ninth grade called "The King Must Die," and I won't go into the details, but it was sort of an eye-opening book that I had about Greek mythology, and realizing that my understanding of story and narrative for Christianity about the king must die, the Savior, and the cross was not the only place where there's a Christ figure. So like to recognize that other books had Christ figures was very important to me. And then you begin to it totally ruined my my reading of other books, because how many characters in, say, classic literature have initials like JC? Almost like you read another one that comes to mind was The Grapes of Wrath, and you have a character who's I forget I'm trying to remember the guy's name in the character, but the main character's initials are JC. And you're like, oh my gosh, Christ figures everywhere in literature. It's really unbelievable. That opened my eyes. The King Must Die. If you've never read it, it's like a 400-page kind of novel, and it's not like the greatest work of art or work of literature ever. But the one great work of literature that has impacted me, and I think about it, I've thought about it regularly all of my adult life, is Fahrenheit 451. Did you ever read that?
I have not, but I know the story.
Basically, that's it really made me. It formed my expectation for freedom, and for censorship upsets me.
Though really talk to Becky about that. She's big on that too.
Just understanding that I don't have to agree with everything that's presented to me, and I need to have my own opinion on things. And that doesn't mean that someone else's opinion isn't valid. And it just really shaped me. That book shaped me for what could happen in a dystopic world, what can happen what could happen potentially, future sort of bad, future gone bad.
Right.
But and how important literature is, and freedom of speech, and that sort of thing. What about you?
So the ones I'm going to choose are ones that I've read in adulthood. If I just rattle out the few that I really enjoyed in childhood, I really enjoyed Hank the Cowdog series, Boxcar Children, and then in middle school, books that I thought were very good, stuff like The Giver and Kill Mockingbird and stuff like that. But in college, I didn't read much recreationally, but I guess it was my junior year. This bookstore opened up in town. I went and bought a book, and it had one book from Hemingway. I was like, oh, I've always heard Hemingway's really good, so I bought it. It's called The Sun Also Rises.
Yep.
And it was a really good book. I loved it. I still have it. I'm actually so I went on a walk to Emmaus recently, and not allowed to have technology and stuff on that, so I took it with me as my downtime book. And I was in the middle of another book on my Kindle, but didn't want to take my Kindle with me because it has a clock on it. So I was reading that, and I've decided that when I finish my current book, I'm probably just gonna dive back into The Sun Also Rises and read it again. And it just kind of reignited my desire to read, so that's why it's important. And then I also read all 3 of the Lord of the Rings books kind of straight through, so I just consider it one book because I downloaded like this Kindle version that's all 3 in a row. It took me a really long time because I have this habit of like I'll go in a spell where I want to read a lot and then I'll just stop for like months. But finishing that, it was at a time when I really needed to have some like closure for stuff, and that was just a good experience for me to be able to finish it when I finished it. It was kind of like a God thing, I guess, in terms of timing there. But the story in general, the world building, just everything about Tolkien, and then like the fact that you chose figures that, you know, are the least expected of the hobbits to be so impactful was really cool to me. And just Tolkien in general, and then along with Tolkien, I really enjoyed C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. So I'd say those 2 series and The Sun Also Rises are probably the most important in my life in terms of like who I am as a person and what I believe. So yeah, it's your turn.
Is it?
I think.
Either way.
Either way.
All right. Next question. When did you know you wanted to be in ministry? You first.
This is really easy because I have a very vivid memory of it. It was the end of my sophomore year of college. I had just finished this course called microbiology. I got a D in it, but it was like the last course I needed to begin nursing school, and I'd already been accepted into the program pending passing all of the courses I was in. And everyone told me, take microbiology in Maymester, which is like a 2-week version of the course, because it's way easier. Well, I took it in full term, spring term. So I still could take it in Maymester, and it wouldn't have thrown off my plan for nursing school or anything, and I was fine with like retaking it. I thought I'd be fine, because part of the reason I got a D was that was the year I learned I needed glasses, because I had been sitting at the back of the class and couldn't really read the board. But so I was sitting there in my bed one night, and that was my plan, but just that small hiccup, I guess, was enough for me to like really listen to God for a moment, because for some reason the word ministry just kind of like got plopped on my heart. And I called my mom, and she was obviously quite nervous upon hearing that, because, you know, I want to do ministry. What kind? I have no idea. Oh, so you go from wanting to be a nurse, which is a very stable and good career, to having no idea what you want to do other than that it's ministry. Okay. But my mom's got strong faith and had faith that I was being serious about it. And so that was the end of my sophomore year of college. I was laying in my hammock, because I slept in a hammock for the first 2 years of college, because, you know, I'm a hippie. But I was laying in my hammock one night, and that just kind of got plopped in my heart. And at first I was like really hopeful, like, oh, maybe God wants me to be a missionary, or, you know, just whatever I could do to like travel the world, because once again, like I said, with Walter Mitty, wanderlust. But I didn't know for the next year and a half. Just kind of sat there patiently discerning and waiting on God to reveal it to me. I was on a fall retreat with some kids from a local UMC, and I'd been doing trips and stuff with them for the past 3 years. One of the kids asked if they were going to get to see me on the retreat next year. I said, I don't think so. This is my senior year. That was really sad for me to have to say that, and I could tell that it bummed them out too. And I guess in that moment it kind of clicked, like, I really love doing this. I love working with kids. There's more to that with, like, I didn't get along with the youth minister, but I kept going because I enjoyed working with the students. So it was just sort of like, why am I continuing to work with someone I don't like? Oh, it's because I love working with kids. Oh, God wants me to work with kids and do youth ministry. So that's when I knew. Fall of my senior year is when I knew youth ministry. End of my sophomore year is when I knew ministry.
For me, I was at the end of my rope around July of 2003, and I had been fired from my job as an engineer, or as a project engineer in construction, and it was because I wasn't willing to transfer to Puerto Rico, and I'd seen a lot of corruption happening around me in the construction world. If you didn't know that happens in construction, now you do. It can be very corrupt, and especially with public projects, which I was a part of, and I was really disheartened by that. I sort of had this innocent ideal of what things really are like. So I had a strong sense that the Holy Spirit was calling me in the midst of all that back to what I had been called to at 17 years of age. So 8 years removed, I found myself running from my call for a long time. So my mother was in Hilton Head with my younger sister. They were staying at a house of one of my mother's friends, and I walked on the beach for a couple of days. And that third day, my mother said, "What do you really want to do with your life?" And I sort of had this sort of burst of real sort of just guttural passion. Like, I want to teach. I want to help people connect with God, and I need to be connected with God, and I feel like that really my gifts and graces are to help others. And I said, I think for me it's I'm going to either be a teacher or a preacher, one of the two. And my mother said, remember your call. I'll never forget, she was sitting in a chair looking at me, and she said, remember your call, David. And she was really connecting me back to what I had told her was happening to me when I was 17 at the altar rail at Canton First UMC, when I really felt a distinct sort of phone call, if you will, from the Holy Spirit at the communion rail to be called to ministry. So that led to really engaging the church for the first time in 8 years. I spent a year walking with my church again, taking disciple Bible study and helping with the youth that summer before I went to seminary. It was a strange time. I actually took another job as an engineer to make the bills, pay the bills, and that sort of thing. But it was that one sort of moment in a beach house at Hilton Head Island. It just sort of reemerged.
So you were in church when you felt it? I guess like the final push to it?
Well, I was called. I knew my calling as a youth. I was 17, but I didn't want to do it.
Right. So you disconnected from church for a while?
Yeah, I just kind of...
See, that
my
happened,
senior year, I disconnected.
Yeah, so that happened after I felt my initial call, and I knew I was waiting and being patient with God, but I kind of got out of church because at the church I was going to, I wasn't really feeling fed, and I wanted to finish school, and I was getting really into what I was learning at school, so I was unchurched, and when I was going on those retreats, he would just call me up and ask me to go because he needed volunteers, and he knew I'd say yes. And so I went on that retreat, and that's kind of when it clicked for me, but I was also unchurched. And talking about remember your call, all throughout growing up, I guess some of you guys might remember this too, because I've been here since 2006 to 2012. I went to this church, but when Dave Henson was here as our lead pastor, he would do this thing called testimony time, where you could come up and share how you saw the Lord working throughout the week. And as a junior and senior in high school who came to church by himself because his parents didn't go to this church, I would ride my bike up the street or drive my Chevy Blazer, depending on how I was feeling that day, up here, and come into church and sit by myself or sit with a friend. But I'd go up during testimony time and I'd just say how I saw God working throughout the week. I never thought much of it because I've always been the type that wants to talk about God. But every time I did that, or often when I did that, Dave would say something along the lines of like, well, you should really consider ministry or something like that. And I always wrote it off because, like you say, I was smart in high school, so I didn't think I would be using my brain for good if I went into ministry. Obviously, that's not true now. I see that. But, I was like, I got to be able to, like, help people. Obviously, I see now I do help people. But I also remember, like, just little things, like people that would say, oh, there are scholarships you can do for going to seminary if that's ever something you're interested in and stuff like that. And it was just really interesting to me now to hear all those things and how I just completely wrote them off, not even thinking about it. But, like, God literally just kind of, like, slapped it on my chest when no, ministry is what you're doing. Like, you pause, so I'm finally dropping it on you because, like I said, that class was a pause moment for me.
What do you do for fun?
I hike, play video games, enjoy soccer, ultimate frisbee, and in terms of, like, with people, one of my favorite things to do, especially if it's somebody I don't know, is talk with them and have, like, a real conversation. I hate small talk. I'm an introvert, but I really love knowing a person and, spending time, like, finding out what their passions, what they do for fun, what, they care about, what they fear, and just knowing someone. That's really fun to me, to become a friend with someone. But on top of that, there's all those hobbies that I like.
I like to go, the one place I kind of get release is at the Georgia Tech football games. I know they're not that good, but for me it's that one place where I can sort of get away. So 6 to 7 weeks out of the year, I'll go on Saturdays for a few home games, and it's just enough time for me to get away from my family and just be. And sometimes I bring my family. I bring Ellie, just to sit there. But other than that, I like to garden. I haven't really figured out how I'm going to do that at the parsonage yet, but I am going to do it.
You guys are going to show up, and it's going to be a tilled backyard.
There is going to be a tilled. I am going to have a plot. I just haven't figured out where exactly. I think I know. And as long as the trustees will let me do it. And then I've already planted 3 blueberry bushes out there, and they're just thriving right now. So That's what I do for fun. Garden. I mean, like just garden by myself. Garden. Like I'm fine with anybody else out there too. And go to a football. I like to go to Gatewood football games, and I haven't been yet, but I will go to Putnam.
You like watching sports in general?
Putnam County High. I love baseball and football. I'm really ticked that the baseball season is not happening right now. I would have loved to have gone to high school baseball games a lot. Favorite food? What's your favorite food?
Chicken pot pie, no vegetables. My mom makes it. It's my favorite. A weird
What's
kid.
in it?
Chicken, cream of chicken soup, and pie crust.
How's that chicken pot pie? That's just chicken and crust.
And a pie. So
That's just chicken, cream, and...
Well, it's chicken pie then. We'll leave the pot part out.
It's just chicken pie. That's just chicken pie.
But it's good. I love it so much. So my mom didn't make me eat a lot of vegetables as a kid, I guess, because she had to eat a lot as a kid and didn't want to. And she was like, well, I'm going to let my kids eat what they want. Now it kind of isn't the best thing because I'm a picky eater, but that's my favorite food. And she was like, she puts the chicken on in the water and she lets it sit all day in the slow cooker or whatever that thing's called, and crock pot. She lets it sit all day in the crock pot, so when it comes out, right. It falls off and it's delicious. Mm-hmm. I also really like Greek food and Mexican food in terms of cuisine.
Oh yeah. Anything Mexican is my favorite food. But if I'm really if I have one dish, like if I'm on death row, mm-hmm. and I have one dish, it's gonna be a ribeye, medium rare, with a loaded baked potato and a salad. And the salad can be usually like some kind of Caesar side salad, or mm-hmm. Caesar salad would be good. But I mean, obviously that's a rarity. But give me a nice aged, like 20-ounce ribeye.
So like my three main food groups are bread, meat, and cheese. Cheese is probably my favorite of those three. But for me with meat, like I love meat and I love meat in all my food. But I've never been the guy that's like, oh yeah, I love a steak. Like steak to me is fine, but it's so expensive that I don't think it's worth the price to me personally.
Well,
but
I don't like steaks that are cooked by other people because they're never what I want.
Right.
So yeah, if you buy an $8 steak at the grocery store, you can do it at home. But I cook a mean steak. I braise it.
You hear that? He's inviting all of you over.
And I stick it in the oven for like 10 minutes at like 500 degrees. Yeah, man, I know how to cook steak.
How does your faith lead to peace during these trying times, and how can others feel peace during turbulent times? So this is kind of related to like the COVID issue, but I did think it was a faith-centered question too, so I figured we'd take it.
Say it again?
How does your faith lead to peace during these trying times?
Oh yeah.
For me, I've been at peace through a lot of this because I also just like look at the fact that more people still die from traffic accidents every year, and that's a sad stat to think of, but it also puts into perspective like this is really severe and it is a problem, but there are other things that are also severe that we don't really talk about. I'm also interested, just kind of offhand, like how much lower are traffic fatalities during this time, because not as many people are on the road. It's just a thing I'd be interested to know compared to like the average traffic fatalities during this time of year. But on top of that, with faith, like whenever I've been in a trying time, God's always been there for me at the end of the rope. At the end of my rope, at one point in high school, my dad lost his job. I got really mad at God. Didn't go to church for a long time, and this is kind of like my core testimony is that time period of my life, because it really sucked. I played soccer all the time. That's kind of where I put all of my effort and energy. Luckily, it wasn't into like drinking or drugs or any sort of other illicit teen activities that people get into. I just played a lot of soccer, but I was really mean when I played. I probably wasn't the best teammate, and I just wasn't a really fun person to be around. And my youth minister at the time, Adam Swimer, to his credit, constantly would reach out to me, ask me to come by, play FIFA, wanted to know my game schedule, and just really poured into me and showed that I was loved and cared about. So at the end of that, when I came through it, and I saw my mom, who at the beginning of that went through a really bad nervous breakdown and got really bad anxiety, her coming through that and having faith stronger than she had ever had, because she literally hit rock bottom. And my dad learning to not always see grass on the other side is greener, because he worked at a job that he was fine with, but he always like there were things he had always wanted to do, and he was always like, I should have done that, or I should have done this. And like he learned that God provides for you what you need, and that you should be like, you need to appreciate what you have. Like you can dream, but you still need to be appreciative. And my mom just gained a level of faith that she had never had before, and I don't think she would have ever attained if that hadn't happened, had she not hit that rock bottom. And for me, seeing all of that, it revealed to me like I shouldn't be mad at God during times of turbulence because God is going to use it in ways that I cannot yet see.
Yeah. I would ditto that. I think for me, I don't have a lot of peace. I don't have a lot of peace about not going to church.
Oh yeah, that part sucks.
As an American, I have a lot of concern about the fact that we aren't peaceably able to assemble.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be like, American first, but as a Christian, I forget the fact that I'm the pastor and for a second, and that I have a flock to tend that I can't get to, which is frustrating. For me, that I have peace that like I'm not saying like the old statement, everybody wants to get to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Like I feel a peace about all of this. I live in many ways for my children. My first line, though my wife would roll her eyes at me, like I do live for my wife as well, but I feel like being alive and doing the best I can is more important to make sure that those kids grow up. And my church, I have a responsibility to them, but I have a peace about this. You all in many ways have given me that peace. I've seen you guys come through time and again this week and really this month, and
for others, I would say prayer and try and think of other times in your life when things have been really rough, but God used it for good.
Why are you a Methodist?
Well, short answer, in 6th grade, I didn't like my parents' church, and this church was the closest one to our house that had a good youth group, so I rode my bike here. But having been here those 6 years and seeing a lot of aspects of Methodism, lots of people that aren't Methodists are really thrown off by the whole pastors not being a long-term, permanent solution thing. But to me, that was really appealing because not only do you get to hear and see other pastors in different styles of preaching, it also gives the pastors a chance to not feel like they're running out of material or kind of falling behind with their congregation, because you'll eventually have a new flock, and there's a way that you can, even if you're having a difficult time with the congregation you're at, your call can still be heard elsewhere, so God might move you elsewhere, and it's a whole lot easier in the Methodist Church, I think, for that to happen than in other systems. And then growing older and seeing a lot of things about Methodist faith, like when I first learned about the types of grace, I always assumed prevenient grace was a type of thing, but I never had a word for it. And then sanctifying grace, growing up Baptist, there's always, revivals and stuff like that, or homecoming, because there's this idea of rekindling a flame, but I like the Methodist idea of keeping that fire going. And I think that Methodism and a few other denominations do that really well in terms of your faith isn't just the moment that you turn to God, because there's salvation, yes, through justifying grace, but you've been protected up until now. God's been there waiting for you. You just have to turn around. One analogy I've said before is it's Motel 6, the light's on, you just got to come through the door, right? God's got the light on for you. And then past that, building it up, having a faith in God, sharing it with others, I think that Methodism is really good at that.
Pastors are itinerate, we move, but it's pastor led, lay driven, so it's a lay driven church, and
that's another aspect I like.
So it doesn't become about the preacher in its best form.
Mm-hmm. I like the lay driven church too.
I'm a Methodist because my parents joined when I was 12 years old, and I fell in love with the grace that was given to us by the congregation. We were Baptist, become Methodist, and my mother and father were divorced, and I won't go into too much detail except that they were received very positively from the Methodist Church, and that meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to me to know that I was received in grace. We have some. You want to finish these questions?
Yeah, we can finish.
Cookies or brownies?
So, I really like chocolate chip cookies. I'd say more than brownies. But when I was in college, I was on this. It was a whole bunch of us from Wesley Foundation. One day, my sophomore year, we went to this state park, and we had a bunch of cookies. We had a bunch of brownies, and we had been grilling out, and we decided we wanted warm cookies and brownies, so we threw them on the grill. Well, then we also had this idea of putting them together, and we had a brownie.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, it was a cookie on one side, cookie on the other, brownie in the
You needed
middle.
a glass of milk, though.
Yeah, well, it was also grilled, so it kind of tasted funny, but we didn't have an oven, and it was good because it was soft, it was warm, it was like chocolatey, but it still had the dough of cookie, which that's the reason I like cookies is because sometimes there's such a thing as too much chocolate, in my opinion. But
yeah, I'm gonna go with chocolate chip cookies every time.
Now, other
By
types
Nestle
of cookies,
Talauza.
other types of cookies, I'd say brownies wins. Like if it's an oat milk raisin cookie, brownie wins, hands down. But chocolate chip cookies, I think, eat brownies.
I won't ask that one. That one's too long. What is the most awkward experience you've had
While teaching.
teaching?
Yeah. Can you think of like your most awkward pulpit moment?
One time I wasn't really in the pulpit. I was a pastor. About one time I won't name the church, but I asked a Hispanic pastor to come preach, and when he started to preach, I had 4 men stand up and walk out at the same time.
Oof.
That was pretty awkward. Next question. What about you? While I'm looking at that.
Let's see. Can't think of a specific moment. I do remember like the first time I was asked to teach, it just felt like a train wreck. Because,
Well, yeah,
that's
normal.
in college, I had done public speaking classes, and I was usually, even in high school, a good public speaker, but by the time I had gotten to where I was teaching, I'd gone so long without doing it. It's like a muscle, you really have to work at it.
Aside from the Beatles, who's the greatest rock band?
I honestly, I really like the Allman Brothers Band. They're really good, but I can't think of like a favorite. That's one I would say like I listen to fairly often, like from the era of, it's not rock and roll, but from that era where like classic rock / southern rock kind of had its birth. I'd say the Allman Brothers Band is the one I listen to the most.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Queen, which doesn't mean I like them that much. I like them okay, but they're the greatest. But I would say the best. My favorite would probably be favorite rock band would probably be Foo Fighters.
Okay.
Foo Fighters, can't go wrong with Foo Fighters. Favorite book in the Bible?
Oof. I think Romans is good because the Roman road's always a good starting point for anyone that doesn't know Christ. I also like Acts and most of the Gospels. Anything Jesus related / teaching people about Jesus. So Romans is good, and then that stuff.
I mean, it's kind of hard to like tell yourself like, oh, this is my favorite book and
Yeah.
everyone else is second. But if I had to pick one book to like tell people to read and just that know the Bible, Esther, the book of Esther. What's your favorite cereal?
I really like. I don't buy it often because they don't really sell it in the big boxes. I like Cinnamon Checks a lot, but lately I've been on this trend where I buy like all the flavors of Cheerios, and that's just my go-to breakfast. I just choose whatever flavor I want. This morning I had cinnamon oat crunch. Yesterday I had berry. So I just get various flavors of Cheerios and eat that. And Cheerios has this one called peanut butter and chocolate, and I loved Reese's Puffs growing up, but I stopped eating them because they're so full of sugar. Well, peanut butter chocolate Cheerios are way healthier than Reese's Puffs, and they're not as sweet as Reese's Puffs, but they're so good.
Well, everybody knows that. I hate to tell you, Jason. Everyone knows that Cinnamon Toast Crunch is the best cereal.
I like that. It's just terrible.
Everyone knows it's the best cereal. But if I had to be honest, like if I'm a connoisseur of cereal, it's gonna have to be peanut butter Captain Crunch. Peanut butter crunch. Sorry, guys, that's the truth. If you weren't in ministry, what would you do? I gotta go for that one.
So, I was a nursing major. I do think I would enjoy being a nurse. I don't know if that would be my job. Probably if I hadn't continued on this path. If I could just like say any other job that I think would have been fun, I think being a rafting guide would have been a fun job. But that's not a career. That's like a job you do over the summer when you're in college or something like that.
I have a fallback plan if ministry doesn't work for me, which I think it is working. But I am planning in my mind, though it will not be profitable. I will certainly not make millions doing it, but to start, and there's a reason for this, to start or to open an ice cream shop.
Okay.
I think ice cream is the one thing that people gather together with, like in public, I guess, and that brings joy to them. So I do.
And most people like it.
See, but I like ministry because I really truly believe that it brings joy at the end of everything. Like ministry has to bring joy. Like if you're not happy doing ministry, if you're not happy
That's true.
at your church, if you're not if there's not, I'm happy is one thing, but joy. I mean, like this is really, this helps me get through my life.
Yeah, and without that joy, ministry would be so heartbreaking otherwise, because you have to deal with a lot of things that aren't fun.
So I'm not a baker, though I can make bread. I'm not really. I can cook steak, though it's not something I would want to do for everybody. But I can make ice cream, and I make some wicked delicious ice creams.
I did have one fallback plan I remembered. So it was before my job here. I was at a point where financially, I was an intern, and youth ministry just wasn't cutting it bills wise. And I told God, I was like, I really need a bone here, because if not, I'm gonna have to find a new job. And I had thought about it a lot, and teaching really appealed to me because it's helping people and it's doing a lot of what I do in this job. It's in a different scenario, obviously, because you're in a school setting, but that was something that I knew that I could probably go, and I have a teacher friend that was my teacher in high school, and she's usually pretty good about being able to find a way for you to, and she's good about helping people find jobs in the education of the loan. So it seemed about maybe doing that and doing that thing where there was a little period of time, I think it's still a thing, where if you have a 4-year degree and you want to teach, will let you teach a course and work on getting your teacher certificate while you're doing it, and that's what I was planning on doing if God did not give me an outlet to where I could have financial success in this career. Because it's not even like I want to make tons of money, I just want to be able to pay rent, and I wasn't doing that very well at the time. My aunt was helping me out, God bless her.
I'm gonna make ice cream though. If for some reason I am no longer a pastor, or if ministry became part time, I'm gonna take out a loan or find $10,000, and I'm gonna go for it and give it like a 3 or 4 month go and just see if I can do ice cream. I mean, I have this idea that I even thought through it, like, okay, I'm gonna take 10% of my profits and I'll give them to a Christian mission or charity, and it'll become like business and mission. But that didn't work out, and now I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
Last question was, what's your favorite hymn?
Hymn that probably gets me the most in terms of singing, obviously, kind of Copper Box. Basic answer is Amazing Grace, but I'm not super into hymn style worship. I grew up really enjoying, if I was going to listen to music during worship, which I don't listen to a lot of Christian music in general. Like, I don't just casually listen to Christian music. For me, it's just a worship experience. I don't get a lot out of it recreationally. But so with that being said, when I'm in big worship, How He Loves is like a really good contemporary worship song that I love a lot. Sloppy Wet Kiss over Unforeseen Kiss every day.
Yes.
Sloppy Wet Kiss, it really shows the imagery and the gravitas and the emotional depth of God.
Yeah.
Unforeseen.
And it's disgusting.
Yeah, but it's also like when dogs lick you on the face, it's disgusting.
I know.
It's also adorable.
I know. It is.
I'm
not changing the lyric. I just think it's Sloppy Wet Kiss is gross.
But I think it's better than Unforeseen.
Would you wipe it off if God turned his back?
If God turned his back? No.
If he kisses you with a sloppy wet kiss, are you going to be like,
no, what if that's like,
I love you too, God?
I think I'd keep it.
Or are you just going to let it sit there and dry on your face?
It's God. I think I'd let it
What is
dry.
this spit? Is it stinky?
I don't
Bad
know.
breath?
I doubt it. God's perfect.
My favorite hymn, I guess, is And Can It Be? It's really old and no one likes to sing it in church, I guess, because they don't know it. But I learned it at seminary. Yeah, I like John Mark McMillan. I like that song. I don't know what I worship to. I honestly don't. Like I worship in church to whatever we sing. This morning I was listening to Tears for Fears, Everybody Rules the World. And I'm not saying that's worshipful, but I just like it. I like listening to pop music and rock music, and I don't really have a I don't really have a favorite hymn other than what we sing in the hymnal, and yeah, I don't know. I like David Bowie. I like Queen. This has nothing to do with hymns.
These are all popular hymn artists.
These are hymns, I like Metallica.
Yeah.
You guys are probably thinking, what is wrong with you?
No, I mean.
Yeah. So no, I like And Can It Be, that I should gain an interest in the Savior's blood.
So
I like that song.
I've always found it interesting too. Like people always, when I'm hanging out with people or when I go on youth trips and stuff, like they're nervous about music and stuff. But I know that like my students at home, they're listening to music that has bad words in it. Now I don't want you to play something that's like littered with cuss words every other sentence. But if we're listening to like, I don't know, Allman Brothers on a church trip, like I'm fine with that because I enjoy that. And that they're listening to that kind of stuff.
You're allowed to do that if you're a Methodist. You're
Yeah.
allowed to listen to Allman Brothers Band.
Just in general, like if they want to listen to Ed Sheeran or whatever's popular at the time, as long as it's not riddled with like cuss words and it's just a few every now and then, like you're already listening to it at home. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
So that's for me, and people are surprised at that, like other youth ministers I talk to and stuff. But I'm like, they're already listening to it, and I don't like listening to worship music just casually for fun either, because
No.
it's not my thing.
No.
It really impacts me during worship because of the way it's written. It is meant to make you feel something, but to casually listen to it while I'm driving, I just feel like that, to me, it takes away like the emotional impact of it being in
Yeah.
like a worship setting. I know that you can worship anywhere, but still.
I would encourage anybody listening to this at this point to listen to turn off the TV and do something else. Like, meaning, like maybe don't listen to talk radio. Maybe now's a good time to listen to some good music.
Mm-hmm. Go for a drive.
Yeah, go for a long drive, but no more than 10 people in your car.
Do people have cars that hold more than 10 people?
What do families do that when they say you can't congregate in larger than groups of 10 that have like 8 kids or 9 kids?
There are families in Eaton that are like that, and I don't know.
What?
I mean, I guess that within it's your family, you can't help it, right? Surely, I don't know. But if they go out in public,
If
then
you
it's
have
like,
9 kids, there's something really different going on in your life that I need to know about.
I don't know how people have more than 2 kids, but you know, I don't even have
don't
one,
know.
and that is thought of.
All right, so I hope you liked this. We hope you liked it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is probably going to get divvied up into 2 parts. I don't know, because it was almost an hour.
Right, but maybe they'll listen. I mean,
And ask questions if you like this. If you're watching this, if you really like it, let us know. We'll do it again. It was kind of serious, not entirely serious. We can have fun. I'm hoping this will be a lot of fun.
yeah, I really enjoyed it because
This was all his idea, though. Just if it's terrible,
well,
it was Jason's.
if we're gonna say that stuff's my idea, I also came up with Wednesday night Bible studies.
He gets all. The, yes,
so-
that's right. He gets all the glory and all the guts. No guts, no glory.
But after we did our first Wednesday night, somebody told me, "Oh, you should do a podcast." Like, just I was like, I've always considered the idea of doing something like this, but never really had a reason to. And right now, we kind of have a
It's
reason.
a video podcast.
Yeah. So, I mean, some people are probably just gonna listen to it as like audio and just have the video off somewhere else, but that's fine. I've enjoyed it. I think
Yes.
it'll be good, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it because I want to answer more questions. I like sitting down and talking to people, and this is a way for you guys to kind of hear us banter and
Coffee
chat.
talk. You
Yeah.
call, we talk.
Exactly.
He had tea. I didn't have coffee. So,
Yeah.
thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Enjoyed it. And if you have other questions, ask them.
We should pray real quick too. I guess we are at a church.
That's fine. That's
Pleasure.
fine. You want to pray? You want me to pray?
I can pray us out. Dear God, I just thank you for today. I thank you for this time that we've gotten to spend just talking, answering questions from our congregation and some that we came up with on our own, and getting to know one another, and just talking about you, faith, life,
Yep.
things that are fun. It's been great. I pray that for all those that are dealing with anxiety or sickness or any sort of other issues, God, that you are there with your healing hands and peace and comfort. I pray that our congregation knows that they are loved by you and cared for, God, and that regardless of what happens in the situation, that you are there for us, and you can use any negative life event in a way to help us grow closer to you and to lean into you. Thank you for this time with David, and I pray that our congregation enjoys this.
Yep.
In your son's holy and precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Adios.
Later, guys.